Crash Team Rumble is fun. Really fun. Shockingly fun. Dangerously fun. I haven't eaten, I'm losing sleep, I have a Frontiers video I need to get out. Someone please help me, I can't stop playing. The Crash Bandicoot franchise is one very close to my heart. I love it. It's my third favourite overall, in fact. I first got acquainted when N.Sane released on the Switch, after being initially intrigued through the character's inclusion in Skylanders. I played through the trilogy, loved it, and tried out CTR and loved that too. And then Crash 4 came along and very casually became my favourite game of all time, so yeah, I'd say I'm a fan. The series kinda filled a void in my heart that Sonic was leaving at the time, being just the king of mediocrity in that period. You know, you've got the powered up animal fighting the mad, balding scientist, with an I'm not a furry but moment. It's all there. Not long after Crash 4's release, several hints started popping up that a multiplayer spin-off game was in the works, but then announcement times were missed, development restarted internally, and Toys for Bob were drafted off to the dreaded Call of Duty mines. Things were starting to look bleak, when suddenly at the Game Awards, Crash popped back up, with a team, ready to rumble. I recall signing up for the game's beta, thinking, okay, this'll probably be a solid enough time, the trailers looked pretty decent, and then I played a couple matches and help me, I'm addicted, I love this game. What happened? Crash Team Rumble is unfathomably fun. Seriously, this thing is so much better than it looks. It's a 4v4 online multiplayer game, where you compete to be the first team to score 2,000 Wumpa Fruit. You do this by smashing crates, collecting loose fruits, and activating a bonus item if you have the right one equipped. You can also turn on score multipliers in the form of gem pads, these clusters of platforms that, once all are turned to your team's colour, grant scoring increases of various percentages. There's also in-map power-ups that differ from stage to stage. These can be defensive items, offensive tools, or just general stage hazards. These power-ups, or relic stations as they're known, are activated via relics. Wow, who would have guessed that one? However, you'll need to decide if you want to deposit a smaller relic count for some quick conveniences, or save them up to activate the big epic relic station found in the middle of the map. These are bigger, more game-swinging relic station offerings that totally have the potential to win or lose you a match. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of overlapping systems to try and conquer, every single one being a requirement if you want to stand a chance. Because, don't forget, this is a 4v4 game, so everything I just described, well, that also applies to the enemy. Crash Team Rumble is very chaotic, as you might be starting to piece together. There are near constant brawls around any gem pads, both teams fighting to gain that score multiplier. There's also usually a lot of action at the Wumpa Fruit banks, since both teams will try and stop each other from scoring. And, my favourite, occasionally you'll just get that one cunt who decides to ignore everything else and relentlessly pursue you specifically around a map. This game is absolute carnage incarnate, and yet, it's wonderful. Everything here works shockingly well. All of those systems flow into each other far smoother than they have any right to. The gameplay may look very aimless and simplistic, but there's a real strategic undercurrent. What may appear to be mindless crate smashing to you is really me biding my time while my teammate takes out the dingo dial stopping me from banking, and not to mention inching myself closer to this gem pad cluster so that I can get a head start on activating them all, which will then increase my Wumpa Fruit deposit when when I get back to that bank that is now lacking a dingo defender. You get it. When you're playing a game of Rumble, you suddenly become 1/4 of a larger consciousness, trying to do your part to benefit the overall team. Thankfully, there are a couple roles, one of which your character will fall into, that make it clear what part you should be playing. There's scorers, who are capable of collecting the most Wumpa fruits, and typically offer pretty fast movement to give you the best shot at that. There's boosters, who specialise in relic collecting and gem pad capturing, are basically like scorers with a slight combat edge. And then there's blockers, absolutely terrifying units whose sole objective is to stop you from banking, at all costs. If you spot a blocker on the enemy team while you have none on yours, just give up, quit and join a different match. It's not worth it, man. Your game is already over. The thing I really like is that these aren't hard roles, like other team-focused games, where you should only be engaging in your specialty. Every character here has the capacity to perform every task, and you're often encouraged to aid teammates in other activities, regardless of your role. Helps that most characters are pretty skilled in multiple roles too. Cortex can totally act as a blocker if played offensively. Coco honestly works really well as a scorer, and I've had some very gnarly encounters with some Tauners. So, are you starting to get it now? Do you see what I mean about there being a surprising amount of strategy? About how all the systems flow into each other really well? I hope I've gotten the point across, and everyone who's tried it can attest. Crash Team Rumble is so much better than it looks. Toys for Bob, the developers, didn't concern themselves with fitting any preconceived genres when designing this game. Allegedly, they just followed the fun wherever it took them, and I fully believe them. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to translate well into watchable gameplay, but when you're inside a match and your head is trying to process and figure out the solutions to so many conundrums on the fly, man, it just clicks. Of course, that does mean there's no catchy phrase to sum the game up. You can't just sell it as a MOBA, or a platformer, or an action game, etc. It's got elements of 10 different genres. What is this, a strategic collectathon, online, multiplayer platformer? Are we gonna call this a scomp? It's a really good framework. Another in the list of banger Crash spin-offs that I hope has a long future. We'll get to that in a bit. But hey, hang on. Take another look at that list of spin-offs. This is something else I want to highlight about Rumble. Platformers kind of inherently struggle branching out into other genres. There's just not much about the core gameplay of running and jumping that really fits most spin-off game types. The kart racers are all stellar. I love these things. But they don't exactly share much fundamental DNA with the original games, you know? Same with the party romps, the sports outings. I think the only genre that actually feels in tune with a platformer's core is the endless runner mobile archetype, interestingly enough. But then we have Rumble. Remind me what you do in this game again? You run around, jump on platforms, collect a whole bunch of stuff, and move around a big platforming-based arena. Fellas, this is a platformer game brought into a multiplayer setting. They did it. Toys for Bob did it. They finally made one of these mascot platformer spin-offs that actually feels in tune with its original franchise. This is unprecedented, and no wonder it doesn't have a genre label. Scomp for life. This is what's so awesome about Rumble to me, and something I hope other franchises take note of. It's not forcing the characters I love into carts, or making them dash along a party board. This is just the gameplay from traditional Crash, tweaked ever so slightly to fit a multiplayer mold, and then dumped into my hands. I can play as n.brio. I can actually play as n.brio. That slime creature over there, I invented it. This is what solidifies Toys for Bob to me as a wonderful developer for Crash. They already proved they could replicate and evolve the conventional Crash experience expertly with It's About Time, but now they've created a spin-off that actually feels at home with the franchise. It takes a level of care to do that. Would have been much easier to make a Smash clone, or some Fortnite derivative weapons-based game, but no, they wanted to create a Crash spin-off that uniquely felt like a Crash spin-off. Smashing success, I say. We are in very good hands. Like, I really do love CTR, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking that one at all. The best kart racer on the market. But this just feels right, you know? Heck, even the name works out better. They didn't try to justify the team part of these racing games until Nitro Kart. But here, what is the core of Crash Team Rumble again? Battle! I'm sure it's come through by now, but gosh, I really do love this game. It kind of perfectly ticks all my boxes. It's not mindless, there's a lot of strategy, a good dose of variety, and no two games are ever quite the same, there's an active meta going on that will evolve over time. I love Crash Team Rumble, man. If anyone at Toys for Bob sees this, thanks for pulling through with this one, guys. I'm having an absolute blast. However, the game is far from perfect, and though love it I do, I've got some issues with it, and things I think need improving, so let's get into that. Note that this all comes from a place of love. I mean, almost everything I talk about does. Do you really think someone would make a 3-hour review of Frontiers if they didn't care about the Sonic brand? I want to see this game become the best version of itself, and it's already pretty close. There's just a few elements I think could be adjusted and improved, so I just brought up Sonic, this is all about Crash. Oh, how about Mario? Let's go. While a fan of Crash 4, like a big fan of Crash 4, what I don't like is its sheer dominating presence in Rumble right now. Barring just one newcomer, all the characters are lifted from Crash 4, and within those characters the movesets are almost entirely recycled for the ones that were previously playable. 99% of Crash and Coco's skins are ripped straight from that game, as are a good half of the relic stations, and every single map is very explicitly based on one of 4's dimensions. There is an overwhelming amount of Crash 4 DNA in Rumble right now. A little bit is fine. I understand using that game as a base to get content started. That's simply an efficient way to do things. But the sheer amount here right now is actively hurting this game's identity. A while back, this idea caught on that Rumble was initially some multiplayer add-on for Crash 4 that eventually got expanded into its own experience. Leaked internal material proves this was never the case, but that rumour still persists today, and it's not hard to see why. Thankfully, this is something that's guaranteed to improve with time. The front-loading of Crash 4 assets might weaken Rumble now, but it also guarantees that we get that out of the way in the first few seasons. Almost all of the existing models are already fully fledged characters, with only male n.tropy and Papu Papu really left to go, and they're already confirmed to be showing up in either seasons 2 or 3. I could see a handful more maps showing up that use a 4 aesthetic too. We still have the 11th Dimension, Cortex Island, Planet Bermugula, and the Salty Wharf to go, and not to mention everyone's favourite, Offbeat. But after that, I think they'll pretty much be out of Crash 4 assets. So, provided the game makes it this far, In about a year from now, Rumble should have a much stronger identity, and the Crash 4 asset flipping will simply be a whisper of the past. Though that's provided we don't get another Rusted Refinery situation, which, yeah, sorry Toys for Bob, but I gotta lay into you a bit here. The Hazardous Wastes and Tranquility Falls are the only two Crash 4 locations so far that have had multiple maps created around them for Rumble, and one of these things is not like the other. One of these things should die alone. Tranquility Falls gets a pass because they picked two levels that look miles apart visually, and not to mention their map's construction is very different. You get two entirely distinct experiences when you play a round of Serenity Gardens versus Surreal Summit. Calamity Canyon and Rusted Refinery, however, these two look the same, they feel the same, these are way too similar. This map's design totally could have worked for an 11th dimension themed stage too. The various pillars of junk could have been remodeled into chunks of ice, and the claustrophobic, boxed-in design feels very reminiscent of Stay Frosty. I mean, I personally wouldn't have liked that because this is actually my least favourite map, but I still would have preferred that over a second Hazardous Wastes level, because Rusted Refinery potentially sets a very dangerous precedent. One where these Crash 4 assets can just be reused until the end of time. One where Rumble may never get a unique identity. I'm hoping I'm wrong on that, and this was just a one-off, but, well, only time will tell. We also very badly need some original music. Sound-wise, this game has zero identity. Even the one newly composed track, that's simply a more energetic retooling of the iconic Crash theme. The music used in the cute little opening movie too. I regret to inform you that that's a licensed track, previously seen by this very same studio in the Skylanders days. The cat-bat situation especially hurts. I was ecstatic when I unlocked them and heard some brand new music. But no, turns out that's also just a licensed track. A copyrighted licensed track too. A way to fuck over streamers in the current climate. Even the actual matches all just use existing songs from Crash's library. They do fit these locations, but they're rather lacking in energy, and don't necessarily gel with the high-octane nature of actual gameplay. Ideally, we'd get new compositions for each of these, but at the very least, why weren't more energetic Crash songs used? Here's a couple Rumble matches, but with music from Crash on the Run instead. It just fits way better, doesn't it? What gives here? Why was this musical choice made? Also, yeah, the game is paid. This has an upfront cost of either $30 or $40 depending on your edition, and not to mention the monthly cost of an online subscription. Now, this isn't an out-and-out bad thing. There's been some very good arguments made for why an initial payment will actually help the game stay alive longer, but in the current gaming climate, it really isn't a good look that Rumble wasn't free to play. People have an expectation for this kind of game. Standards have been set by Fortnite and Fall Guys and the like, especially when there's still a battle pass in here, a paid battle pass. It just does not make the game look appealing. Not to mention the polar opposite problem a price tag causes. Setting a game at $30 creates a different kind of expectation, in terms of content amount and length and whatnot. And Rumble just does not meet that expectation, and not yet at least. Give it a couple seasons and the $30 might be justified. But right now I'd barely charge $20 for this, and I love the game. And all of this gets compounded upon when you remember who's publishing the game, which, yes, this is an Activision-owned project. If that makes you uncomfortable to support it, then hey, fair enough, I totally get that. Worth noting that they allegedly had very little involvement in the actual development of the game, beyond simply publishing it. But if you've got a moral stance that you want to maintain, then I more than respect that decision. All of this to say, Rumble's been dealt a pretty fucking bad hand, huh? Not a guaranteed enough hit to warrant free to play? Not a low enough price tag to win a bunch of impulse purchases? It's really not in the best position. Also, and this is very much a personal thing, but data suggests Fake Crash may be coming as a fully fledged character at some point. And when that happens, can we please get a redesign? I love 90% of what Toys for Bob have done with Crash in terms of art direction and modelling, but Jesus Christ, Fake Crash is the most colossal fumble I have ever seen come out of this studio. The character's only defining traits are that he has big bushy eyebrows and gigantic goofy teeth. That's the entire gag, based off of a bad bootleg plushie. He's just Crash, but dumb and fake, hence the name. And then you look at 4's take on Fake Crash, and like, what is this? The eyebrows aren't nearly bushy enough. And the fact that so much of his smile is still visible after the teeth end is genuinely infuriating. They're just way too small overall. In fact, they can be almost entirely hidden from view when you pose him right. Toys for Bob just didn't exaggerate the details nearly enough here. I can't believe I'm agreeing with the Crash Bandicoot subreddit of all places, but this post sums it up absolutely wonderfully. There's not too much that needs fixing, thankfully, simply by the nature of the character. Just properly exaggerate the details, maybe make up your mind on if he wears black renditions of Crash's clothes or not, add the bright green shorts that On the Run gave him, and we're all good to go. Or also bring back the bigger nose. Yeah, they got rid of that one too. Why? Of course, a really smart direction to go would be entirely remodeling him, making his body shape closer resemble the Insane asset. That would do wonders for the fake aspect of the character when comparing him to the new model, but I understand if that's asking a bit much. Also, Toys for Bob, why does everyone on your team shorten Wumpa Fruit to just Wumpa?
Collecting Wumpa.
You know, additional Wumpa.
To collect Wumpa.
To score 2,000 Wumpa.
Collecting Wumpa.
With that full Wumpa.
Just focus for now. Wumpa.
It's Wumpa Fruit. It's one extra syllable. Why is this a company-wide thing? Oh, referring to Wumpa Fruit as apples or mangoes hurts their feelings, but apparently just chopping off half of the name is perfectly fine. Now, if you'll humour me for a second, I'd like to talk about the characters individually, give my 2 cents on each of them, because there's a shocking amount of variety to the way these guys play. Different movements, different attacks, different strengths. No two heroes are at all the same. Even characters who once played identically, like Crash and Coco, now have differences applied, and that's a wonderful attention to detail. Speaking of, Crash Bandicoot. He's probably my favourite, the closest thing this game has to an all-rounder type of character, despite him fitting a specific role. He's very easy to pick up and play, has a useful slide for keeping up the pace and evading hazards. He's very simple and fun. I like him. Coco's probably objectively better, being just like Crash only with an offensive move attached, but I personally find her just a bit less fun. I don't know, I can never seem to aim the quantum wall right, and I think I'd rather have Crash's slide. Torna's pretty interesting, packing a really great hookshot dash for getting out of dodge, and being quite the fierce opponent if played correctly. The kicker for me though is I can't play her correctly. I can never seem to land any of my Crash of the Titans-esque slams, so she's pretty middle tier to me personally. Cortex, however, Cortex packs a punch. The combination of his double jump and quantum dash make him a dangerously mobile character, and his ray gun can do some pretty rapid fire damage, from a distance no less. Combine that with his nuclear bomb piano move, and you get one of my favourites. Definitely a more technical character, but man, you should be scared of someone who's mastered a Cortex. However, if you want to cause some abject carnage without learning any intricacies all that much, then Dingodil's the one for you. I can't say I've played too much of him, Blocker's my least favourite role. I just find myself kind of sucking at combat, so I tend not to go with the characters who specialise in it. But out on the field, Dingodile can be a menace. Far more skilled players have certainly given me a run for my money when I'm trying to score. He also has one of the coolest skins in the game right now, so there's that. Catbat certainly defied my expectations. Being the one newcomer, they were something of a blank slate. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect from them. However, their quintuple jump and dive bomb abilities more than won me over. Catbat's a total blast. The most vertical character in the game right now, at least until Engine joins the fray. They get a great head start on capturing gem pads, and it gives you a unique way to get out of enemy fire. I wish they were a bit faster though, that's gotta be the one major downside for me. Plus, there's this weird, I think, glitch, where sometimes they just refuse to smash any crates for a few milliseconds. It might not come across too clearly on screen, but you really feel it when you're playing. Although I'm sure that'll get patched out in no time. n.brio is a character I was highly anticipating. I was very curious to see how they translate a typical Brio boss into a balanced character. And, objectively, they did that very well. He packs a punch in his monster form and it doesn't last too long to be broken. But subjectively, he's my least favourite. n.brio is a glass cannon, which absolutely works for him, but as someone who already isn't good at combat, man, I just die instantly whenever I try to do anything that's not in the monster form. And even then, I can never seem to buy enough time to drink the potions before some mook smacks me about. I just cannot get into this character, I'm sorry. Then finally, we've got Mrs. Nefarious Tropy. Easily my favourite blocker, but is still a blocker. This playstyle just isn't for me, I'm afraid. She's definitely the most fun of that role, offering some decent mobility without the drawback of dying in like 2 hits, but I'd simply prefer either scoring or boosting. The combat just isn't my forte. Might be a tad broken too. Her time tethers probably shouldn't be this spammable, and her 50 KO requirement seems a bit extreme. And no joke, it took me over 12 hours to unlock her. But still, she's pretty alright. Definitely my favourite of the blockers, but she won't be breaking the top 3 anytime soon. Also, this won't fit naturally anywhere in the video, so shout out to user Grooming Your Son. Something I've seen no one but IGN of all places bringing up is the sheer thought that's gone into the map design. These things are really well crafted. From the verticality of surreal summits, to the claustrophobic nature of Rusted Refinery, to the fascinating ways the banks versus spawn points are set up in Tar Valley, say, all of these maps offer something really different. Their relic stations clearly had a lot of thought put in too. Everything here just feels super balanced. No item lasts too long, or deals too much damage, or is totally unavoidable. I don't feel cheated here, at all, which is a very big accomplishment in a game like this. Despite my preferences, I'll often find myself picking different characters depending on the map. Cortex is an absolute go-to in Just Beachy, for example. Speaks to the variety and the structure of these things, if it's actively getting me to swap between several mains. I'd say that's a job well done. As a Skylanders veteran once said,
"Good job, Toys for Bob."
I hope I've gotten across just how good this game is. It might be a little overpriced and published by a living piece of mucus, but I'd say it's more than worth it. If you feel like this video's at all piqued your interests, then please, check the game out. Affiliate link in the description below. Nah, I'm just kidding. I don't think Activision's ever gonna wanna sponsor me after I say fuck Bobby Kotick. Though you really should give the game a shot. I have a feeling they're going to introduce free-to-play weekends sooner rather than later, so if you spot one of those, then give it a try. And no harm in trying the game, right? We kind of desperately need the player base too, because right now we're doing fine, but that's the launch window. The games always do fine at the launch window. Once that period dies down, however, that's what I'm worried about. It's no secret that Crash Team Rumble isn't exactly popular right now. A lot of people don't even know the game exists. And among the ones that do, people either say it looks boring, they're not willing to cough up the $30, and you get that special breed of subreddit users who genuinely think we should have gotten a Crash Bash remake instead. Guys, what are you on? At the time of writing this script, only one video on the official channel has gotten anywhere close to reaching 1 million views, and for a giant like Activision who advertises the shit out of these games, that's really telling about public interest. There was this one particularly disheartening post made by John Cartwright. There's a couple of us stragglers trying to sell the game, but the vast majority either don't get it, don't like it, or are just wholly disinterested. The thing is, I really don't know how Activision even can sell the game anymore. A free weekends would be a decent help, but people have seen the trailers and they just don't care. It's really hard to get across how much better the game is in hand than it appears in footage. Kinda frustrating, honestly. Hopefully I'm doing my part. I've tried to make this video as comprehensible and informative as possible while still being entertaining, and if I can get even one new person to pick the game up, then I suppose it's mission accomplished. But man, I am worried for this game's future. We know we've got at least one more season guaranteed. Those who bought the deluxe edition got seasons 1 and 2 prepaid for them, so I think Activision would genuinely be breaking the law by not giving us those rewards. But after that, the game's longevity is uncertain, to say the least. We know they've got plans, and allegedly Toys for Bob intends to support the game long after its launch, but whether or not they'll be granted that opportunity, that remains to be seen. I'd like to think Activision's smart enough not to expect this to do Call of Duty or CTR numbers, and since it gets overwhelmingly positive reception almost any time someone actually tries it, I'm hoping that's enough for them for now. We'll have to wait and see if any official numbers are released, I suppose. Still, going with the assumption that the game does have a bright future ahead, I'd like to pitch a few of my own ideas. The TFB team seems to always be looking for feedback, so here's some things I think would make the game a better experience. Hi if anyone's watching from Toys for Bob. You guys are pretty cool. Firstly, I think some kind of ranking system would be be very welcomed. It would help distinguish the top players from all the normie scum. The closest thing we have now is someone's battle pass tier being displayed next to their name during lobbies, and that's a decent way of showing someone's experience, but it doesn't factor in their skill at all. For example, I'm level 53. All that tells you is that I've played the game a fair bit. It doesn't differentiate my skill with a Cortex versus my fumbles with a Brio. Maybe display a player's character level instead? That would certainly help clarify, though a more refined ranking system is the obvious solution. Make it like Elite Smash. You have to play with a character and play them well for a certain amount of matches before you're even eligible to enter this ranking, and then every time you win, your rank increases, and every time you lose, it decreases. Rinse and repeat for all 8 heroes. That system would have to be toyed around with a fair bit, seeing as it's not solely on you if you win or lose. You might be the best Rumble player on the planet, but if you get paired up with 3 crashes who don't understand the most basic rules of the game, then you have no chance. But something like that would be very welcome, and might even become a necessity as the game lives on and more new players join in. You know, it's going to be quite helpful to know if I'm paired up with an experienced n.tropy that I can rely on, or if that's a 2 IQ point monkey playing, who simply likes mindlessly smashing things. Plus, I'm assuming the battle pass tiers will reset with every new season, so once we hit September, even someone's experience readability gets lost. This may become an issue. More characters would obviously be nice, although that's already a confirmed aspect. We know we're getting Ripperoo and Engine in the coming months, male n.tropy and Papu are likely next, then it wouldn't surprise me if we got that Spyro-themed season for the new year. 2024 is Year of the Dragon, after all. I'm quite glad we're getting that crossover out of the way, honestly. It was always an inevitability, so getting it over and done with so early on means the game can really start to shine as a Crash experience. Because, yeah, all you Spyro fans, don't forget whose name is on the box. You'll get your Spyro 4 next year, he's probably right. Then you can stop spamming it in every comment section, and even atting Toys for Bob the day after Rumble came out. Man, take a chill pill. Megamix would be my top pick for a newcomer. Yeah, not exactly a common request, I know. I just think he'd make for a really fun, chaotic blocker. Kinda like the archaic feel of Brio's monster form, but for an entire character. And more balanced, obviously. Speaking of blockers, I feel like Tiny's something of an inevitability, given his usual prominence in the franchise. I could actually see him being on the more mobile side of blockers, seeing as his boss fights usually revolve around movement. Nina would be nice. I have a very soft spot for that character, as she could use her arms to dash like Torna with a spin like Crash. She'd be great. She's kind of already soft confirmed, actually, given her placement in that Crash 4 artwork that directly teased this game. But that also implied Chick and Stew would be the announcers, and that obviously didn't come to fruition. Shame too, since you know how we have the thing now? If Chick and Stew were in there, we totally could have had Ready, Set, Rumble! I'd ignore the bad voice work, I just really wanted to put a proof of concept for that out there. Despite his relegation to Calamity Canyon's epic relic station, a kind of this game's version of Shadow locked as an assist trophy, I'd love to see Oxide playable in future. You could give him an alien space blaster, finally giving Cortex a direct counter. Ooh, or maybe you make him ride around in a smaller version of his UFO, Egg Walker style, that could be packed with a variety of gadgets. Plus, that would force you to make the UFO relic station into a separate Gasmoxian, And since we already have the guard, and now we'd have Oxide playable, that just kinda rounds out the rule of 3 much nicer. Also, bring in the crate. Yes, the iron checkpoint crate from Nitro Fueled. Continue that gag and bring him into Rumble. Give him a full moveset. Here's a pitch even. It would be goddamn hilarious and I would love it. Some extra modes would be very welcome too, although I have no doubts they're already planning a variety of those. I'd love to see one that removes all the gem pads and relic stations, a much more cutthroat version of the game. Maybe this could be reserved for the pros that have entered that ranking system? Something that changes up the very core mindset of the game could also be fun. For example, what if instead of being the first to bank 2,000 Wumpa fruits, there's just a time limit, and it's simply a race to see who can bank the most Wumpa overall in the time allotted. Oh Christ, I just did it, didn't I?
Wumpa.
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 Whoa, Wumpa with no fruit. It's also not quite a mode per se, but I'd love to see a little bit of map customization. Specifically, a day-night toggle would be fun. Places like Serenity Gardens especially would just look gorgeous at nighttime, and given inverted mode's prevalence in Crash 4, I'm kinda surprised we haven't gotten something like this already. Now, if you'll humour me for the next few minutes, and allow me to just absolutely geek out, the one thing I'd love to see more than anything is a Skylanders themed season. Yeah, so Skylanders is my favourite franchise of all time, period, and whether Crash and Spyro fans want to admit it or not, it is a very celebrated part of Toys for Bob's history. They're not shy about referencing it whenever an opportunity arises. Given we're getting an entire season to cross over with Spyro, and the fact it's Trap Team's 10th anniversary next October, I think everything's in place for us to get a big Skylanders theming in a future season, and you cannot comprehend the levels of excitement that puts into me. Of course, I have a few ideas of my own, so if you'll let me, I'd like to pitch a Skylanders season real quick. Okay, so firstly, which characters are joining? There's no way you do a crossover with a game like this without bringing in a couple new playable characters, and there's a lot of Skylanders to choose from, so how do we make a selection? Well, firstly, I reckon they'd narrow it down to just the big tentpole characters. You know, the ones that were shoved onto every single piece of merchandise. As much as I'd love it, there's no way a character as obscure as Scratch is ever joining Rumble, which unfortunately means my favourite is out of the cards. We'll get him next time, Thumpback. We'll get him next time. I also feel like it only makes sense to narrow things down further to just one character per role. It takes a lot of effort to program and balance these guys, so I can't really see them going for more than 3 Skylanders, especially considering the sheer variety in all our top picks. So, the 3 I've decided upon is, for Scorer we've got Stealth Elf, for Booster we've got Gil Grunt, and for Blocker we've got Eruptor. I feel like these 3 are pretty self-evident picks for their respective roles if you know anything about the series, and if not, go play some Skylanders. It's a good time, I'm not helping you out here. Stealth Elf would be one of the fastest characters in the game, balanced out by her only being able to attack close range. She could have that stealth dash thingy for her secondary ability, and make it like Cuphead's Smoke Bomb for a strategic advantage. And for her third move, she could summon a little Whisper Elf buddy, who'd heal allies and hurt enemies. Gil Grunt could fire out those harpoons, his water spray being the charged secondary attack. For a third move, I'm honestly not sure. Maybe do something with his Tidal Wave Series 4 buddy, and maybe we pull from his Superchargers moveset. I don't know. Either way, he should absolutely be allowed to hover for a brief time with the water-based jetpack. That just feels obvious. Eruptor would be a very fun character, Finally a blocker I might just have to play given my love for the franchise. Usually his main attack is firing out magma balls from his hands, although I think that'd be a little too OP here. Instead, I'd tweak it so he's now a brawler, dealing hard punches with those molten fists, but he could still fire the magma balls if he's in the air, much like how Brio still throws his potions downwards. For the charged attack, I think we can let him spew a singular magma ball like normal, and the third attack would surely have to involve his eruption ability in some way, although how you'd balance that, I'm just gonna leave in the hands of Toys for Bob. Now, characters are only half the battle. We're far from done here, I regret to inform you. What's the stage? What's the map? Where are we going to be using all these cool new characters? Well, there's a couple notable places throughout Skylands that would make for a good stage. The Core of Light ruins, the Dreadyatch, Woodburrow, etc. But I think any Skylanders fans watching kinda know where this is going. The Academy just became such a prominent location in the latter half of the games. It's kind of the only choice you can actually go with. Plus, it would give us an amazing opportunity for cameos, since we're only bringing in 3 Skylanders, and a few more in spirit, which we'll get to in a second. That still leaves a lot of fan favourites that it'd be cool to see. So, style the Academy like a Colosseum. Maybe we're in the training grounds part of the school. Or you simply set it up like the TV show. Point is, have a crowd of Skylanders in the background, cheering the teams on. Do you know how happy that would make fans? You can even chuck in some popular NPCs like Flynn, Callie, Hugo. Plus, you'd get to include the name chanting thing that used to happen in the Giants arenas. As for the map's design, I think going for the flatter, just beachy and tar valley side of verticality would better represent the Skylanders games, which were typically pretty flat. Whereas, like, a map with a lot of high up platforms is just a requirement for the Spyro stage, you know? Relic stations are where things would get really fun. There's actually just way too many little items and ideas from across the Skylanders franchise for me to settle down on any one concrete concept, so here's just a barrage of them. You could have the Sky Iron Shield swirling around you like a Carno. You could have the Ghost Pirate Swords create an area of damage. You could have the Anvil Rain do exactly as the name implies. You could have the Healing Elixir provide you health, although that might work better as a pre-match power you choose. You could have Traptanium shards popping out of the ground like the mushrooms in Tar Valley. You could have the Dragonfire cannon taking shots at people like that one turret in City Scrape. Same with the Archean crossbow. And that's me taking just the magic items into account. There's so many options here. As for the epic relic stations, yeah, I've got some ideas there too. We could summon the darkness and have him protect us with dark magic a la Uka Uka. We could go with the polar opposite and have the Core of Light spawn in, making everyone invincible Aku Aku style. We could do something with Eon. We could make the Dreadyatch fly overhead and rain down cannon fire onto the map, complete with a loud BOOM! But I think my favourites involves a very notable character that's been suspiciously absent from all of my ideas so far.
Bum bum bum! Me! Chaos?
I know any and all Skylanders fans want him playable, and believe me, if they were gonna add more than 3 characters, I'd absolutely be voting for him. But something about 2 Skylanders and then a villain doesn't quite feel right. And I think if done right, Chaos would make for an equally amazing epic relic station. There's so many ways this could go. So many options if you know anything about his boss fights. But personally, I think the most satisfying and dangerous to the enemy team route to go would be for Chaos to become a temporary 5th member of your squad. AI controlled, obviously, and actually good AI, quite crucially. He'd function much like Oxide, where he hones in on an enemy player and then chases them down until they're gone. The difference here would be that, unlike a leisurely moving laser that even the slowest character in the game can just about outrun, Chaos would have attacks that can actually reach the enemy player, eliminating them in a matter of seconds. Lightning blasts, dark orbs, oh, we gotta have the Doom Sharks in there, and make them function just like Trap Team. He'd be a fully fledged character that's just too OP to be anything more than an epic relic station. Best part of that is that you get a bunch of people, both fans and non-fans, seeing how cool Chaos is and begging to be able to play as him. So then, maybe a year later, you nerf him a bit and make that happen, and then bam! Suddenly we've got a second Skylanders season on our hands. The last thing we really have here are the skins, because if you're only gonna fully implement 3 of the 167 unique Skylanders available, at least dress up the rest of the roster to represent some of the others, right? I've created a list here with some attempts at visualization, Photoshop magic. I've tried to pick Skylanders that fit the vibe of the original Crash character, so let's take a look. So for Crash himself, you gotta pick an equally crazed and insane Skylander, and I vote Trigger Happy. For Coco, I was originally gonna pick Stealth Elf, the female lead dressing as the female lead and all, but since she'd already be an actually playable character, I wanted to choose someone else that isn't represented. And in terms of popularity, Roller Brawl sprung to mind, and I think she fits rather well. A very sporty character paired with someone who apparently has a mechanical keyboard obsession. Torna was fairly obvious. There's only one token heroic female Skylander that would fit here. I mean, there is also Gear Shift, but as she's from Trap Team, she's too obscure for this kind of thing. I'm talking about Ninjini, baby. For the longest time, I was set on Dingodile being Terrafin. They even give him a shark skin in-game, so they obviously agree his design works as a basis for that creature. But quite literally as I was typing this script, it dawned on me that he'd work perfectly as Snapshot. They even share a voice actor, look it up. I'm actually not sure which I prefer here. Snapshot works better, but Terrafin is the more popular pick, so I leave it up to you. Comment below which you think is better. Cortex next, and Chaos. There's no question about it. They're both the big, bold main villains of their franchises, and if Chaos does get relegated to an epic relic station, then a skin resembling him is at least a nice middle ground. For Catbat, I actually struggled for a little while. There's not many rock-based Skylanders that spring to mind. However, then I started broadening my view to include the villain senseis from Imaginators, and yeah, Wolfgang. Instantaneous choice. N.tropy is another one that stumped me at first, but when I included the villains, yeah, she's the Golden Queen. There has never been a better fit. n.brio might have been the most obvious selection in the bunch. I can't believe how perfectly it fits, actually. We already have a Skylander that throws potions and drinks them to grow into a larger beast, and his name is Popfizz. They're not currently in the game at the time of writing this, but since they're so close to release, I thought I'd include the Season 1 characters too. Engine being a mad scientist Frankensteining himself with machinery, that just screams Dr. Crankcase. And Ripperoo was originally going to be my Wolfgang. He's got the face for it. But Catbat fits the personality better, I think. Instead, I started looking for Skylanders characters who fit the animalistic, creature-ish vibes of Ripperoo, and suddenly I was like, yeah, oh my god, it's so gotta be a chompy. Also, I'd really like to see a Flynn skin. He's not a Skylander, but he was such a big part of the franchise. I kinda feel like you can make him the one exception here and give Crash a second themed skin. As for the 3 Skylanders who'd actually be playable, they're not gonna get skins of other Skylanders, obviously. So an alternative that I think would just be the cherry on top of all of this would be turning some of their variant figures into those characters' skins. Ninja Stealth Elf, Volcanic Eruptor, Green Gill Grunt, give them all legendaries, darks and eons elites, and add in their superchargers attires too. That would be so cool. If everything I've been pitching here were to happen in some way, shape or form, I think that'd genuinely break me. Toys for Bob, please, I am begging you here. Anyway, yeah, that's it. The Skylanders bit is over now. Thank you for tolerating me, I just needed to get that out of my system. I love Skylanders, man. Activision, please bring it back. And hey, yeah, speaking of Crash Team Rumble seasons, the last major thing I want to get into is just what those entail. Hi, hello, future me here. This next part is like ever so slightly outdated now, because Toys for Bob have clarified some of the Season 1 details, but the bulk of my points still stands, and you can look at it as a time capsule of some issues that existed right after launch, so yeah. So, the weeks prior to launch come around, and we get 2 things. This roadmap showing what to expect from the coming season, and the big launch trailer showcasing a lot of that Season 1 content. Now, crucially, the roadmap specifies that Season 1 begins the same day as the game's release, and the trailer, the launch trailer, showed off a lot of stuff from that season. Everything here implies we'd be getting Ripperoo, Dr. Engine, the TNT Sticky Bomb, this Zap Trap mode, the bogged down map, and more on June 20th, right alongside the base game. But now, at the time of writing, it's been a week since the release and none of that is in here. Where's my Ripperoo, guys? I want to hear what you've cooked up for his new laugh. Please. Yeah, this could have been handled way better. Everything publicised directly implied we'd be getting Season 1's content dumped adjacent to the game on the day of launch. But it's not here. Ripperoo isn't coming until July, apparently. And that was announced via a Twitter post by Paul Yan, not on the official page. That then probably means Engine won't greet us until August if the season's ending in September. Also, wow, yeah, Season 1 comes to a close on September 11th. A very funny date to have something abruptly meet its end. I really don't understand why this wasn't specified further. It only confuses the already tiny player base. It doesn't help matters at all. One person absolutely hit the nail on the head. Nitro-fueled made things way clearer. Also, don't show this stuff in your launch trailer if it isn't going to be available at the launch. That borders on illegal false advertising. I'm really not a fan of that. I mean, you got me all jazzed up to play with Painter Coco, my favourite skin of hers, but it's not in the game. Neither are, like, half of the skins shown on the Season 1 promo image. Why, man? I want to play with these. Also, what are these little snippets of animation from the launch trailer? It's obviously another little mini-movie like the game's opening. I have watched that one enough times to instantly know this is different. But what's the context for it? Is it an alternate opening? Is it some Season 1 related animation? And, quite crucially, when are we gonna get to see it? I don't know. But that's just the marketing of the seasons. Something that can be very easily adjusted for Season 2 onwards. This isn't a biggie in the grand scheme of things. What might be, however, is the content found within those seasons, because I'm not so sure on this. Let's take another look at what's on the menu here. We've got 2 new characters, 1 new map, 1 new power, a new limited time mode, and some new skins. That's like 1 of everything major, which would be fine if these were month-long seasons, but this is meant to last us through until September. That is simply not enough content. I'm not knocking the effort at all. I truly do understand how much time and manpower is required to successfully implement all of this. But the harsh truth is that a live service game like this requires so much more new content than this, at so much more rapid a rate. Like, we're getting Ripperoo in early July, which positions Engine nicely to be the big draw of August, with the map, Zap and Trap releasing around those 2. So, what, that's 1 new character, and maybe a singular new power for the entire month of July? There are only 15 levels of progression attached to every character, with weekend bonuses to speed that up no less. This is in no way going to take me a month to fully digest. It'll barely take me 2 weeks. And that's even if I end up enjoying the character at all. He's a blocker, so he very well might not be for me. And then what? I get a brand new power, sure, but that's not going to keep me coming back for 30 days straight. And now I do kind of get this approach. Spacing out this content so that you have something new in the game every 3 or so weeks isn't too bad a strategy at keeping player attention. It is objectively better than dumping this in all at once at the start of the season, then slowly watching as player numbers dwindle until September. I do get it, but equally, taking content that would just about fill 1 month of a live service game and dragging it out across 3 times that amount isn't a solution. You've put some sticky tape onto this metaphorical hole, but you haven't fixed the problem yet. And in all fairness, I don't know what the answer is. The team is obviously working as hard as they can. If they could put more content out, they absolutely would. A just add more, work harder request here completely ignores the well-being of the people at Toys for Bob, and that's not any kind of solution. There kind of isn't one, really. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I guess that kinda ties back into the uncertain future of the game. I simply don't know if the seasonal output will be enough to hold the ever-shrinking player base, and hey, look at that, I managed to make some kind of thematic synergy out of all of this. Huh, go me. Also, hey, something I should mention in this game's favour is that I've experienced literally almost 0 technical hiccups. I got booted back to the main menu once, and the waiting lobby can get a bit funky sometimes, but after that I found the matches running smooth as butter. Good job, team. I ran into almost none of the bad of online multiplayer, despite running into just so many crashes. And that is just about everything. Well, not everything. I mean, I could get into how they should have kept the name Wumpa League, because that puts the Wumpa fruit at the forefront of your mind, and makes you realise that collecting it is the core of the game, whereas Rumble puts the focus far more on the combat side of things, which is only meant to be an avenue of stopping players from scoring, but you get the idea. I love this game. I truly do love it. It's one of my new favourites, and that's insane considering I am just not usually an online multiplayer kinda guy. I think it's already downright amazing as is, but has the chance to blossom into something outstanding if the right content gets added. Despite my gripes and complaints, I hope that love shined through. I really do want nothing more than for Rumble to find its footing and become the very best it can be. Hopefully you'll give it a shot, hopefully you found this video entertaining, hopefully someone at Toys for Bob will see this and consult me directly about a Skylanders reboot. Paul, please, just give me like 20 minutes of your time. I have an entire pitch ready to go. I'm telling you, it could be so good. Hi, hello, thanks for watching my little Rumble vid. I hope you had fun with it, even though I imagine like 3 people are gonna watch this, considering how unpopular the game is. Oh well, I'll shoot myself in the foot viewership-wise. I just wanted to bring some positive attention to the game, man. It more than deserves it. I've got a Patreon, a Twitter, and a Ko-Fi. Links to those in the description and on the screen right now. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. And hey, fun fact, if you defeat Ruth the bot, the enemy team will be ruthless. I'm always gonna love the Crash 4 art style, man. I mean, look at this. Just look at this.